Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Alums. I'm Dominic Mruzak, and today we have a communication manager from RG&E and a former journalism student at SUNY Brockport, Mike Baggerman. Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dominic. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back here on the campus at SUNY Brockport.
Oh, yeah, good stuff. Speaking of SUNY Brockport, I actually want to start there. If I remember right, you graduated from the communications department here at SUNY Brockport, right?
That's right. I graduated as a journalism and broadcasting major back in 2012. Spent 3 years here at SUNY Brockport. I was fortunate enough to be able to graduate a year early, but also at the same time, you know, you think about your traditional 4-year route of college. It's kind of a year that I wish I could have had back, because, you know, they say that these years are the best years of your life, and, you know, I took 1 year short on it.
Oh, that's okay. Absolutely. While you were here, first off, your major was communications, but did you ever switch majors? Was that your first major?
No. So, yes, my first major was communications, but when I initially started here, I knew I wanted to be in the world of sports broadcast, or I'm sorry, of just broadcasting somehow. I didn't know if that was going to be, at the time, a radio station DJ, you know, spinning the tunes on your local rock station, or if I wanted to go into, say, something like sports broadcasting or TV broadcasting. And as I started to, you know, try the experiences here at Brockport, whether it was Brockport Television, whether it was WBSU, that's when I started to carve out my niche. I did some of the radio station DJing for a while, but then when I started the sports broadcasting, that's when I really found that this is the area that I love doing the most, and this is the area that I want to pursue.
Well, what about sports broadcasting as opposed to like other kind of broadcasting? What drew you in?
Yeah, so when I was a young broadcaster coming through, I think one of the things that I had to realize is just knowing about who I am as a person. As somebody, initially I wanted to be a radio DJ, but like I said, spinning the tunes. You got to actually know music in order to do stuff like that. The band, for example, REO Speedwagon, I pronounced it Rio Speedwagon. I don't think
a big no-no.
I don't think I really had much of a future in music DJing, but when I was in school, I was an athlete. I played football, I played baseball, I played basketball for a little bit. I always loved gym class when I was in high school and whatnot, and I just naturally gravitated to sports broadcasting, and those opportunities were provided to me over at the radio station WBSU. You know, given that SUNY Brockport is a Division III school, there at the time, I'm not sure, I'm sure it's still around, but you know, we had the opportunity to broadcast Brockport men's and women's basketball, college hockey, college football. But also, what was unique about the radio station is that they had it wasn't just limited to what was on the campus. There was also the opportunity to call Section 5 sports, so your local high school football, your local high school basketball, local high school hockey, which is huge around here. And as I just kept doing that day in and day out, I just grew to love it more and more. And that's what determined the field that I was going to pursue.
Wow, that's great. A good passion for sports is great for that kind of stuff. You seem to know a lot about football, hockey, basketball. Did you ever have to report on a sport you didn't know a whole lot about? Did you ever like cricket or something, or a sport that not everyone knows?
Nothing like that. I've never had to do, well, cricket. I did have to do lacrosse at one point.
Ooh.
I don't know anything about lacrosse. But also something important to know is that, you know, when you're a high schooler coming out, even if you played the sport, you know, the knowledge never stops. So you say, you know, did I have to do on things, report or broadcast on things I didn't know about? I would also say to you, you don't know anything about football. You don't know anything about baseball. You don't know anything about basketball. But what you learn is by, you know, calling games or being around players, being around coaches, people who are in it and have dedicated their lives to it. You learn nuances of the game that maybe the average viewer can't see at home, or in the case of radio, the person who's listening to the game, they might not know. They might not know the benefits of a certain formation. They might not know in baseball, for example, why a runner should not be the first out, should not be out at third if it's the first out, or if it's the third out of an inning. Like, there's nuances to the game that I think a lot of people don't know about, and it's not until you ingrain yourself in a certain sport that you start to learn those things.
Absolutely, I can absolutely see that. I completely understand that. I'm not sure I can appreciate it in the same sense, because I'm not really good at sports.
It's okay.
It's not quite in the same league, but I can definitely appreciate it. So at WBSU, at 89.1 The Point, what skills did you take away from that you still use today?
I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things. It's about knowing the benefit of what your brand is for the community. And, you know, when you think about WBSU, when you think about 89.1 The Point, you know, people think, oh, it's the college radio station. It's not. It's not just the college radio station. It's a community station. This is a station that, you know, let's say there's a snowstorm here in Monroe County. You're going to have a local talent on the radio that can provide you with the local weather, with what's going on. The local talent can let you know things about the community, things that are happening in news, things that are happening in sports. It's about knowing the benefit that whatever your organization is has for the community. And then there's obviously nuances within it. You know, it's learning the basic production elements. You know, what makes a good 30-second commercial, what makes a good 30-second promo. It's learning how to do what we're doing today, is talking to an individual in front of cameras. It's about the interviewing skills. It's about just creating those soft skills that, yes, you know, you could become a master at, you know, production elements and video editing, but it's a lot of the soft skills that matter, the interpersonal relationships that you build over time. Those are some of the biggest things that I took away from my time at The Point.
That sounds great. You mentioned branding a lot. Now, a lot of people who tell me about radio personalities, there's a lot of like creating your own brand, creating your own personality on the radio, help you stand out. Is this something you thought about both like today? Is this something you thought about as a student?
It's something that I thought a lot about more after graduation than I did when I was really a student here. And I think it's important for anyone who's a student who's trying to craft their niche within the industry is that, again, you can learn all the technical components. I was a student here 15 years ago. The technology has changed so much during that time. You know, we have the rise in artificial intelligence with which today's students have to, you know, learn to deal with, while also dealing with some of the legacy ways that things have been done. But it's the soft skills. It's like I said, knowing, you know, how to do interviews. Those are real important things that you take away. And when we talk about, you know, personal branding and stuff, listen, in the world of radio, sometimes you got to have a personality, you know, right? Like you got to be able to connect with who your listeners are, who your audience is. And, you know, people can't connect to you on radio through the way that you look, the way that you present yourself. I could be wearing, you know, just a cutoff and shorts right now. And if I was in radio, it'd be fine. But obviously here on TV, people would look at this and be like, what the heck is this guy wearing? And then they would judge me as a result of that. So it's knowing how to present yourself, knowing how to do your own personal brand. That's critical for long-term success. Absolutely. I can definitely appreciate that.
Speaking of post-college work, you worked for Odyssey for some time as a disc jockey, as a reporter. People who go right from college into radio often describe it as being like a baptism by fire. It's like it's a lot of work at once. Did you have that experience too?
So it wasn't so much a baptism by fire for me. My career trajectory was after I graduated from Brockport, I went to go work in minor league baseball for a few years. So I was doing sports broadcasting, I was doing marketing for various minor league teams, public relations efforts. I was the mascot on occasion. My first job post-college, I was the driver of baseball players in Brooklyn, New York for the team down there called the Brooklyn Cyclones. I would drive players to and from the hotel every day, and then when I was at the field, I was the guy who was working the games in the stands, you know, like the wiffle ball games. So I bring that up to say you develop this foundation of work underneath you. Then when I went over to Odyssey and WBEN Radio in Buffalo, I was very fortunate in that I had developed a lot of skills early on that helped lead to some success later on. And it also helps that, you know, I have some friends that worked for the radio station. They got me in on the station. They helped transition me from that world of baseball to, hey, here's terrestrial radio, here's news radio, here's the way that we kind of do things, and they were a huge help along the way. But I will transparently admit, if I had to do it all on my own without any help, I might not have had the amount of success as I did.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to keep that in mind. You definitely mentioned doing a lot of what I would call like odd jobs, like chauffeuring people in New York City or being the mascot for a team, which sounds a little bit like fun.
It can be. It can
it can be. What kind of value do you put on, like if you were going to hire someone, what kind of value would you put on like flexibility within a job?
What do you mean by flexibility within a job?
If you were in a position where you wanted to hire someone, what kind of qualities would you look for in terms, like, do you look for somebody who's really flexible of what they can do in terms of like, is able to drive someone, then is able to really be a mascot for it?
Absolutely. I think it's so important in today's day and age to have multiple types of skill sets, whether it's a public relations background, whether it's a marketing background, whether you have the soft skills that we talked about earlier of having those interpersonal skills, knowing how to operate a camera, knowing how to video edit. I think in today's job market, it's not just hey, this person's really good at this one thing. We'd rather have somebody that is good at 30 different things, and then you can plug them into various roles. It helps with job security. It helps provide the overall mission success for whatever that organization is, whether it's your radio station, whether it's a big corporation, whether it's a minor league baseball team. Having that flexibility and being a jack of all trades is paramount to long-term success.
I see. Do you think there's still like a place in the media world for someone who's really good at one thing? Or do you think it's much more skewed towards people who are good at many things?
I think
is there still that kind of that market for someone who's specifically really good at a particular thing? Or is that kind of gone now?
I don't want to be absolute in an answer and say, yes, if you're really good at one thing, then that's, you're guaranteed to have success. But what I'll always say is, in today's day and age, you have to find unique ways to stand out. And I think one of the most important things to do is to develop a long set of skill, a buffet of skills to be able to have any kind of advantages in this, especially the broadcasting industry. I think long gone are the days where, you can build a brand around just like one person just talking. Yes, there are still examples that are out there, but I think for the overall masses, you have to be really good at a lot of things, or just know how to do a lot of things, or just be flexible, be adaptable at a lot of different things to have that kind of opportunities to get in the door. Then as you go throughout your career, if you become, let's say you're doing this interview right now. If you find that, hey, I'm an incredible interviewer and that's where I have the value, okay, then maybe when you're in your 40s or 50s, that's kind of the role that they want to plug you in because they can trust you in that role. But especially when you're starting out early, you got to have a lot of flexibility.
I can definitely appreciate that. Working for Odyssey, it's a really wide variety of jobs. Out of the jobs you did there, which was the hardest?
Definitely, I think the hardest was to be a news reporter. It's funny because it's a lot of things that are planned throughout the day, but also you have to be ready at a moment's notice for anything to happen. For example, one day we'd be reporting on, say, local FBI doing a training in one of the rural communities. And I distinctly remember it was on my drive back to the radio station that I got a call that there was a police officer who had drowned in the Niagara River.
Oh my.
And it was a horrifying thing, and I thought it was just going to be a simple, straightforward day. I drove my car, not as fast as I could, it was right within the speed limits. Drove the car down to where the incident happened, and then we ended up staying there about till 11 o'clock, midnight, and then the work continued on into the next day. It was that kind of versatility, the ability to be at a moment's notice, think that, okay, plans have changed. We had this idea to do one thing for a story. Nope, we got to scrap that. The entire narrative's changed because this emergency has happened. And especially in the world of news, an incident could happen at any time, whether it's an indictment of a congressman, whether it is a snowstorm that happens, right? We're in the western New York area. Snowstorms are going to happen. You got to be ready to report on a moment's notice of anything. So it's about taking ownership of what the world is and what's happening in your community. And that's, it was tough. It was rewarding, certainly rewarding, but very tough at times.
Would you do it again? If it came up again, there was another opportunity to be a news reporter?
Absolutely. I think the benefit of being a news reporter is that we talked about branding earlier. It's important to become a brand in the community, a trusted voice in the community. If I know that I'm going to report a story, I know I'm going to do the best possible job I can to tell the most fair, balanced, nuanced story as possible. Tell people as much about this scenario as possible to educate our listeners. I think that was one of the most important things and one of the things that I prided myself on. And that opened up a lot of doors for me because, as, careers change, life happens, you look for other opportunities. All of a sudden, your name comes through in a resume field. It's like, hey, wait a minute, I hear this guy on the radio. All right, let's give him a shot. We talk about branding. You create your own brand as a result of it because if people can trust you, that's going to open up opportunities for you.
Absolutely, I can definitely appreciate that. That kind of like news spontaneity is really characteristic of like a high-speed journalist job.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely appreciate that. What kind of advice would you give to somebody like a new news reporter who is excited for that kind of field but may not be ready for that level of spontaneity? Like, is there anything that you do to prepare yourself for like sudden changes in a job like that?
I think it's important to find good quality mentors in your field, whether it's people that you work with directly at your station, whether it is people who are, even at competing stations. You see the way that they operate and you take little nuggets of how they approach the job and you're like, okay, I really like how to do this. I'll say this person's name and I'm speaking to them in a great light. There's a news reporter in Buffalo by the name of Dave McKinley, and he lives in Brockport, by the way. Yeah. But Dave McKinley, I think, was one of the guys that I looked at when I was in news, and I saw the way that he approached interviews. I saw the way that he interacted with whether it was elected officials or community leaders or just people in general. I saw that, and it always stood out to me because when he did an interview, it got great responses, it got nuanced answers to questions, and it was just interesting, right? Because you could ask any question, you can get a vanilla response from somebody, but Dave did it in such a unique way that stood out, and I said, okay, I want to adapt some of that. Now, again, we're all different in our own ways, so you have to carve your own niche. But I took a lot of what he did, and I just mentioned him. There were a lot of other great reporters in the Western New York market that I learned a lot from. But you find your own path as a result of it and see some of the people in the field that you worked with and say, I really like that. I want to try to use that for my success in the future.
I'm going to consider that. That sounds like very good advice. News reporting-wise, I'm sure you worked some pretty long hours in the news. What are some of the most key events you've reported on in the news?
Oh,
is there anything real serious you got?
Oh, golly. Making me go through a big old Rolodex of things. Like I mentioned a couple of them. There was a police officer who had unfortunately drowned during a training exercise years ago. Multiple snowstorms. I remember sitting in court some days, and there was a story about a young woman, probably 20, 21, 22, right around that age. She was in a relationship with an individual, and it was a domestic violence incident. And I ended up covering that entire trial when it was happening. And you see the powerful moments that happen, and it's real. I mean, this woman, she had severe burns on her face as a result of it, and obviously it was a terrible tragedy that happened. Fortunately, she survived, and her partner ended up getting convicted as a result of it. But just, the bravery that I saw from this young woman to go onto the stand, testify against her abuser, and you share that story, and you witness it. You see the family in the courtroom. They're crying during the testimony. They're crying during the final conviction announcement. Stuff like that. I mean, it's sights that you never forget. And so that's powerful. And then of course you get some of the fun things that you get to do in news, like in Buffalo, obviously the Buffalo Bills run the show around there, right? But you get to meet players, you get to meet management, you get to go on tours of places that the general public wouldn't necessarily get to go on. So you get the saddest tragedies, and you get also cool things. Like I told my boss one time, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be covering a press conference at City Hall or if I'm going up in an airplane today. I got to go to the White House one time to see David Bellavia, a morning show, or I'm sorry, an afternoon host over at WBEN Radio. he earned the Medal of Honor. I got to go to the White House, see the president put the Medal of Honor around his neck. Like, it's funny that in this conversation, that's the third thing that I thought of. I mean, there's so many things that happen, and
it's such a variety of experiences you get.
And by the way, it all comes together so quick because when you think about, you get into January, you're like, all right, what's going on this year? Do I want to take a vacation this time? And oh, by the way, in 2 weeks I got to go to the White House. It's stuff like that you don't think about in the moment, but you gain an appreciation for years later.
Absolutely. I admire that level of spontaneity in that kind of department. It kind of what excites me with the news. It can be anything at any time for any reason, just disappears.
And sometimes it can be really boring. Sometimes you're sitting at a government meeting and you're waiting for them to go through all the procedural stuff, and it takes them 45 minutes and you're just sitting there. You're just a casual observer.
It's a budget meeting that lasts 6 hours.
Exactly. And if I never have to do that again, I'll be grateful.
You mentioned you covered some pretty heavy topics. How do you approach that in terms of writing about it? Because obviously you want to report the truth. You want to report what happened. But on topics like domestic abuse, where it's quite a heavy topic, there's a level of delicacy to apply them when writing about it. You have to remember, it's possible some guy's kids read it at some point. So how do you approach writing something like that?
I think, and this is great advice for anybody that's looking to get into really any industry, is whatever you do, whether you're going to work in video production, whether you're going to be an accountant, whether you're going to be a spokesperson for something, you have to approach everything with the utmost professionalism. You have to realize, and especially as a reporter, the public is reading your work. Your peers are reading your work. It is your ethical duty to be the most responsible journalist as possible. It's important to I always say this, truth can mean anything to anybody. You have to tell the truth in context, and it's important to educate the viewers. Now, there's going to be people that just see a headline and just see the subheads, and that's all they're going to read. So it's important to summarize things in context as best as possible, but your job as a reporter is to always be as professional and as responsible as possible, because people are going to be seeing that. So we talk about, the incident with the domestic violence. Like, to me, I was just simply doing my job. It is important to always do your job with the utmost professionalism, especially in news, just because that was my experience in doing that. But I would say that would apply to anybody in every field, whether you're in law, whether you're an accountant, whether you are a financial advisor, whatever you're planning on doing. Professionalism is number one.
Professionalism. That's some very good advice. That, and then keeping the news within context.
Of course.
So the audience can be educated about it. They can understand the full picture of it. That's some very good advice. I'm going to keep that in mind, for sure. So you worked on Odyssey, and you learned a lot of things from there. Nowadays, you work as a communications director at RG&E, Avangrid. While it's not quite journalism, it's probably closer to PR, am I right?
Yes.
What skills did you take from Odyssey that you brought to RG&E? Is there a connection there?
Yeah, absolutely. So as communications manager for NYSEG and RG&E, my role is to be a storyteller for the company. And I take the same principles that I had when I was in journalism is, you want to tell the truth in context. You want to try to provide as full of a picture as possible. So whether it is talking about, energy capacity, whether it's talking about the role that line workers play in storms, it's important to share those stories and to do it in a way that is ethically responsible. I've always prided myself in my entire career. I have always done the responsible thing, and people, especially in today's day and age, there's a world where people say that things are fake news. I can confidently say that whether I've been working in public relations or whether I was in journalism, I have always sought to tell the truth in context.
Understood. I can definitely appreciate that. With your job in RG&E, what sort of I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what sort of stories do you report on of RG&E?
Sure. So there's a lot of different things that are always happening with the company. For example, we want to talk always about infrastructure projects that we're making. We want to talk about the roles that we're doing to improve the grid. We're always wanting to talk about the human element of the people behind the company, because I think stuff like that presents the company obviously in a great light. But it's important for people to know that this is the important work that the company does in the community. We were talking earlier about the role that your brand plays in your community, whether it's WBSU or whether it's for the local utility. I think it is critically important to always share that you play an important role in the community, whether it's providing electricity, to be able to power all the lights on in here, or if you are, entertaining people on the radio, talking about music, or if you're reporting on a storm that's happening, or hey, there's a big nor'easter coming our way. You always have to remember that you play a role in the community. Doesn't matter what company you work for, you play an important role.
I'm going to keep that in mind, for sure. Journalism has changed. I know 2012 wasn't all that long ago, but journalism, the technology, and the approach you take, it's changed a lot between then and 2012 and today. What do you think is the biggest change, the one that really affects journalists a lot nowadays in terms of technology?
I mean, the rise in social media has been exponential since 2012. And during my time here at Brockport, Facebook was a thing, Instagram was starting out, Twitter was just starting. Sorry, it's called X now, but I still call it Twitter. But nowadays, I mean, if you are not on social media, and if you're not engaging, and if you're not navigating that space, then you are almost doing a disservice to your viewers, because I don't know about you, at night I'll browse social media. That's what I like to do just in my spare time. I think it's important to be able to navigate that landscape while also maintaining, hey, in the world of journalism, remember your job, tell the truth in context. Doesn't matter whether you're doing that for a 30-second video on TikTok or Instagram Reels, or if you're doing a 3-minute piece on air for your local station. Your job is to tell the truth in context as best as you possibly can. Social media is just one element of it, but it's a very important element, because you got to go to where the people are. Who knows where things are going to be in another 10 to 15 years, but it's going to be so important for people to know that the media landscape is going to be changing all the time.
I'm going to keep that in mind. When you were a cameraman, when you were a reporter for the news, were you a combined reporter and cameraman as one, or did you have a cameraman to come with you?
Yeah, so I was a radio news reporter.
Radio news reporter, that's right, thank you.
But that's an important thing to know, because yes, for some TV people, they would be by themselves, they'd have their own camera. Other people would have camera operators with them. When I was in radio, again, it's not just one medium. Yes, radio is a medium that people are going to be listening to, but there was a website component. There was a social media component. There was obviously the on-air radio component. There was there's a bunch of different factors. So it doesn't matter whether you're a radio or TV reporter. You're a multimedia journalist. You have to be able to tell the story in multiple different ways on multiple different outlets. So, the one thing I always said, I don't have it on me, but I would take out a phone, I would get a little clip of something that someone was saying, post that on social media. I would take a picture that would be used on our company website. I would embed the social media post within our website story. And then, of course, I would tell the on-air story for the format of radio. You can't think one-dimensionally, hey, this is the only way that we're doing it. You got to be able to think in multiple different forms. Even in this interview, you guys are going to be using it for this format here. If you want extended reach, you cut it into clips that tell the stories in context, and you post that on social media. You gain more traction that way. It's just another layer of storytelling. And again, who knows where it's going to be in 10, 15 years or even 2 years. But this is what it's like today. You got to be able to accommodate multiple different outlets.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mike. I really appreciate it. I think we have to start wrapping it up here today, but thanks so much for your time. You had a lot of great insights about media, about journalism, about reporting, and what it's like to be an accurate and ethical reporter in today's world. I really appreciate your time, Mike, and thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Again, this has been Coffee with Brockwood Alumni.